The Book of Adrian, Chapter 10. The End of the World. The boat drifted for days. The river carried them along in sluggish, winding turns. Adrian could not remember the last time they had eaten. The days blurred together, each one more hollow than the last. The hunger had stopped gnawing at his stomach. His body had learned there was nothing left to take. His limbs felt light, weightless, as if his flesh had already begun to wither away. Father Gregor spoke less and less. He sat at the edge of the boat, staring at the water, his fingers absently tracing the beads of his rosary. His prayers had grown quieter, more fragmented, dissolving into the vast emptiness around them. Some nights, Adrian thought he heard him whispering something different, not prayers, but confessions. Half-formed sentences lost to the river's current. Adrian never asked what they meant. Then one morning, Adrian awoke to the sensation of the boat scraping against the riverbank. The impact was gentle, barely enough to rattle him from sleep. He blinked groggily, his vision slow to adjust in the dim light. And then he saw. Father Gregor was slumped over in the bow of the boat, his head tilted forward, his hands still clutching his rosary. He did not move. Adrian sat up, his body stiff with exhaustion, and reached toward him. He hesitated. Then he pressed his fingers against the priest's throat. There was no pulse. For a long time, Adrian simply stared at him. He did not know what had killed him. Was it starvation? Was it sickness, or had he simply let go? Adrian exhaled through cracked lips, his breath shallow. He could not weep. He could not grieve. He had no strength left for sorrow. The river had carried them as far as it would. Slowly, stiffly, Adrian climbed out of the boat, his feet sinking into the damp sand of the shore. The wind blew, thin and weak, barely enough to stir the tatters of his cloak. And then he looked west. There it was, the ocean. He had imagined this moment countless times back when hope had been a thing he still allowed himself to hold. He had pictured the ocean as salvation, a vast, untamed force, free from the creeping death. A place where life might still exist, where the world might still breathe. But as he stood there, his body swaying with exhaustion, he saw the truth. The ocean was dead. No seabirds circled overhead, no foam-flecked fish leaped from the waves. There was no scent of salt, no tang of life carried on the wind. The water stretched endlessly, but it was not free. It was smothered, veiled in the same creeping death that had consumed everything else. The mist clung to the waves, shifting and rolling with the tide, mimicking the ocean's pulse but offering nothing. Adrian watched, unblinking. He turned from the shore and found a tree at the water's edge. It was old and gnarled, its bark cracked and grey, its roots digging desperately into the lifeless sand. It stood alone, the last survivor of a world that had already surrendered. He climbed into its lowest branches, just above the creeping death, and sat. The waves pulsed in slow, deliberate breaths, rolling in and out with no urgency, no purpose. The creeping death mimicked them, shifting like a ghostly mirage on the surface, swirling where the tide pulled it. The sky above was a pale, distant grey. Adrian rested his head against the bark and closed his eyes. A memory surfaced, so vivid, so untouched by time, that for a moment he wasn't sitting in the dead tree at the end of the world. He was 8 years old, it was autumn, the trees in the village square had burned gold and red, their leaves falling in great showers every time the wind passed through. He was running through them, laughing, kicking up piles of crisp leaves with every step. His mother was nearby, humming a song while she kneaded dough at the outdoor table. His father was beside her, sharpening a blade, the slow, rhythmic scrape of metal against stone blending with her tune. Adrian had spent all morning piling the leaves into a great mound, taller than himself. When he was finally satisfied, he called out, "Papa, look! Mama, look how high it is!" His father grinned and wiped his hands on his tunic. "That's a fine pile, son." His mother, still kneading, smiled without looking up. "Are you going to jump in?" Adrian puffed out his chest, shaking his head. "No, it's not for me." His father raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Then who's it for?" Adrian's grin was wide, mischievous. Without warning, he leapt forward and grabbed his father's wrist with both hands, tugging as hard as he could. "For you!" His father let out an exaggerated yelp, stumbling forward. Adrian shoved him with all his strength, and his father, playing along, pretended to lose his balance, toppling dramatically into the pile. Leaves flew into the air, and his father lay there, groaning, "Oh no, I've been defeated!" Adrian bellowed with laughter, jumping onto him, burying both of them in the leaves. His mother sighed in mock exasperation. "You too," she muttered, but she was laughing too. Then his father scooped Adrian up, holding him tight, his beard scratchy against Adrian's cheek. "Someday, boy," he said softly, ruffling Adrian's hair, "you'll be bigger than me, and I won't stand a chance." Adrian's throat tightened. The memory felt like warm hands wrapping around his chest, a weight both unbearable and gentle. He didn't want to open his eyes. He didn't want to let go of this place, this moment where the world had still been whole. But the wind called to him, hollow and lonely, and the scent of rot pulled him back. Slowly, he reached up and unfastened his helmet. For a moment, he just held it in his hands. The metal was cold, slick with the grime of a dying world. Then he lifted it from his head. The creeping death stirred, curling at the base of the tree. The wind blew. The tree stood alone at the edge of the world. The ocean pulsed endlessly. The creeping death rolled with the tide, shifting in slow, patient waves. There were no footprints in the sand. No laughter carried on the wind. No voices calling from the past. Only silence